The guest chi, like you said, I mean, it can be very harmonious, and then it can be very incongruent. And then it's like, well, what do we do? When things are easy, when it's like, okay, hum, like, this is fun. Let's just have a really fun summer. It's all working together. But when it's incongruent, it's like, how do we harmonize or create harmony within an incongruency?
I'm Michael Max, and this is Qiological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. I have a friend, he's in his early 90s. He conducts a community orchestra, and he was telling me about an upcoming concert. They're doing Mozart and Wagner. The Wagner is the last of his Romantic period pieces. He says that you can see everything in that piece that will be developed later in Wagner's operatic period. Study something long enough, and you glimpse the mind of the person who created it. I'm going to say that again. Study something long enough, and you glimpse the mind of the person who created it. That would be the difference between playing the notes as transcribed and playing the notes as an expression of the consciousness in the emergent yin-yang syncopated dance of heaven and earth. It's the difference between following a point prescription or even diagnostic guidelines of a system and seeing something of the nature of how the body and mind are interwoven together so that you're taking your instructions for treatment not from a theory, but from the patient as they are unwinding their experience in the moment. This is why it's helpful to study a method long enough that the method itself begins to teach you. That guardrails of do and don't go from admonitions and rules to seeing how the natural laws of gravity, sunshine, influence of moisture, and the entanglement of mind and body reveal the mind of nature. I imagine what it might be like for my friend to conduct an orchestra with a sense of being that comes from having glimpsed the mind of Wagner. How enlivening it is participating in an act of creation. I suspect it is like when doing acupuncture and you no longer hear your teacher's voice saying, do this because, and instead hear from your patient saying, here's where I need some help. And it takes you to the edge of what you know and into a landscape of potential you'd previously not considered. I've got a feeling that this is the kind of quickening that takes you from being a journeyman practitioner and into a kind of mastery. But it takes time to learn something well enough that the work becomes the teacher. The flow and counterflow of yin-yang seemed straightforward to me when I began my study of Chinese medicine. But over time, I've come to see how it's nothing like the teeter-totter-like balance that I had envisioned at that time. It's not simply a flow between poles. It's more like an Afro-Cuban drum rhythm. There is a circular, spirally syncopation that keeps the dance ever lively and unfolding. And especially as you consider the intertwined unfoldings of the 10 heavenly stems and the 12 earthly branches, or viewed another way, the Wu Yun Liu Qi, very quickly we go from a yin-yang, day-night, hot-cold, to an ever-evolving landscape of parts and wholes, all interacting in the 10,000 ways that they do. In this conversation with Christine Cannon, we look into the entanglement of the 5 movements and the 6 qi as they help to inform our experience of being human in the presence of heaven and earth. One of the things I love about the curious medicine we practice, it can get pretty cosmic, but it also reminds us to keep our feet firmly grounded into the earth. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out their new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AccuFast needles. And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear-Don't-Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lyle, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com, and where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AccuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit AccuFastNeedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. All the sponsors here provide helpful products or services that you'll find beneficial in your clinical work. Want to get better at treating concussions and other neurological conditions? Clayton Shu has some innovative methods. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. Later in the show, Jane offers you helpful suggestions on how to raise your rates, and Golden Flower Chinese Herbs shares a journey of healing that I think you'll recognize. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast.
Hey there, I'm Cameron Jafari, an acupuncturist from Los Angeles. So I started learning nanopuncture from Dr. Clayton Shu because I was facing these complex neurological conditions like stroke and MS in my clinic, and I just felt like I lacked a solid process to treat them. Brain-related issues always felt like a whole different animal, and I was looking for a clinical system that worked and could guide me through them. So after attending my first nanopuncture seminar, I was able to apply the process pretty quickly and with pretty amazing results. I remember the first stroke patient I saw afterwards was a guy who had had a stroke 2 years back, and he couldn't talk at all. And after a few treatments, he started saying a few words. And a few treatments after that, he could actually have conversations. It was pretty incredible. So this is why I feel like nanopuncture is the future of acupuncture neurology. And you can be a part of that. Their next seminar is on treating concussions and is being co-taught by both Dr. Xu and Dr. Ayla Wolf in New York City on April 26th and 27th. To learn more, visit nanopunctureseminars.com.
Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more. Ever found yourself listening to a Qiological conversation and thinking, wow, I needed to hear that? Yeah, me too. And I never know when I'm going to hear a guest say something that stops my world and reboots it with a larger perspective. If these conversations have ever helped you to feel more grounded, more inspired, or just less alone in this strange and wonderful work we do, consider becoming a member or supporting the podcast with a bit of tithing to the donation jar. It helps keep the lights on here at the Qiological Sound and Motion Lab so that we can bring you these conversations every Tuesday morning. You'll find all the details at qiological.com. Thanks for listening and for being a part of this. Christine Cannon, welcome to Qiological.
Hello there. This is lovely. Thank you to have me.
I'm delighted that you're here. We've had a little bit of email conversation. You're interested, and you do quite a bit of work with something that I'm interested in, but don't understand that well, but I'm fascinated with. Wu Yun Liu Qi, right? The 5 movements in the 6 Qi.
Yes, yes. And it is fascinating, and it is, at first glance, seemingly very complex, even though it's using the foundations of our medicine as in the elements. And it starts in the heavens with our known elements, wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And then from there, things start manifesting on earth and within man. And that's where the story, if you will, or the understanding of how it all unfolds can be confusing. And that's why I think it maybe is hard for people. And I certainly have spent hours and hours with my trusty translation, Paul Unschuld's translation of the Neijing, that is now littered with sticky notes and penciled in notes from, I think I started really around 2019.
2019. What got you started? What got your interest with this?
First, I think it was Dr. Liu Hong's classical Chinese medicine text. That's where I started.
Liu Li Hong, yeah.
Yeah, I started with that. Now, just a little about me, my background. I was very much TCM trained and have spent...
As most of us, really.
Right.
It's the gate you walk through.
It is. And I landed there, and my clinical application of it served me well. You know, it really has been wonderful. And
TCM.
TCM.
What, you're not banging away on TCM and saying it's no good? Actually, no, seriously, this makes you a little bit unusual because there's a lot of folks like, oh, TCM, yeah, well, that communist stuff doesn't work so great.
I know. But you know, really, look at the reality of that. It's what started here in this country. And could it be better? Everything can be. But it's a wonderful, I think, a wonderful framework in which to get started. And then from there, if you choose to go into a different direction and practice, but according to the Shanhan Lun, or even go into Japanese style of the medicine, Korean, that's great. But I think knowing that the foundation is what got you there is really important. And I think for me, anyway, with my training and my nature, I'm an ox, so I just keep moving
You
forward.
just plot ahead.
And I don't really look sideways very often. And in that respect, it has served me well. And have I ever gotten bored? On occasion. I mean, that's life, right? You can get bored. But I rely heavily on my herbal medicine and my Zang Fu differentiation as a result of my TCM training and applying the herbal medicine. So for me, I always held the classics at arm's length because I was busy and I was doing my thing and I was teaching and practicing, and it would come around periodically either through a colleague or a student, and then, it came around with the classical Chinese medicine text by Liu Hong by a colleague of mine, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to check this out. And it was just lovely. I was just like, okay, I'm ready.
I'm ready. I like that. I love that phrase. I'm ready. I think in terms of development, just development in general, whether it's a child growing into an adolescent, into an adult, whether it's a new acupuncturist learning how to do business and becoming a business person and a practitioner, or learning to become a husband or a wife or whatever in a relationship, there's this process of development that has to happen. And there's a kind of ripeness that occurs at a particular time when you're ready for another thing. It's like, okay, I'm ready to go from, A to B. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so that's where it started. And I love that text. And it's another one of the texts that I can keep going back to and read the same section over and over and learn something.
Isn't that delicious, actually?
Yeah. And learn something again. You're like, wow, okay, wait, I've read this. And then it just, the penny dropped and the dots joined in my head. And I'm like, okay, this is good. And so then that was 2019, and COVID found us, and I found Dr. Edward Neal, and he was doing some free webinars on Sundays, not every week, I think it was every other week, and I just loved it. He was talking about how 2020 was an excess metal year, and and so he helped contextualize what we were experiencing. And even my husband's not a practitioner, and even he got excited about listening to Dr. Neal about the energetics of what was happening in 2020 and the development of COVID and how it was affecting us all. And that pretty much opened the door. I just jumped in, fully into, I want to learn this. And so I had my Neijing translation, and I started wading through chapters 66 through 74, and I go back now and I still have notes from that time in my book, and I just am in awe of the process that it has taken me to wrap my head around this system of what we're working with at any given time when it comes to qi. And there's layers, and they rotate through the 60-year cycle. And there's a consistency. And once I figured that out, and actually this past year, 2024, I put my books down, I think in February or March. I was like, I can't, this is hard. And I put them down for probably 3 or 4 months. And I went back to them, and all of a sudden it was like a door opened, and I understood it. I was like, oh, there it is. It happened. And I think and I'm very much this way. I have to take something, observe it, interact with it, and then internalize it. It's got to go. It's got to sit within me and percolate. And that's pretty much the process that I've been through with learning this system.
I love hearing that, and thank you. I appreciate hearing that, because I think so often there's this idea, here's a thing, here's a theory, here's an idea, it's old, it's important, you should get this. Like, it's in the book. Here, we can explain it. It's like, you should get this. And And yeah, you can look at the diagrams. You can imagine the heavens turning this way, the earth, in cycles of 10, and the earth turning in its cycles of 12. And yeah, you kind of, with some hand waving, you can kind of get it. But I think these things, like practicing medicine for that matter, is something that you have to live yourself into. And it takes time, and it takes sitting with a lot of uncertainty. Like, I don't really get this. I think there's something here. I've got a hunch. And I kind of see the outline, maybe, but then you stick with it. And like you did, sometimes you step away from it. It's like when you're trying to solve a problem, you can't think, you don't know what it is. You go out for a walk, you come home, you take a shower, in the shower, bang, there it is.
Exactly.
So it just takes some time and a few turns of the cycle.
It does. And all during this time, I've created so many charts and spreadsheets with the information. It's crazy. And so if something was happening in my garden, for example, I'd be like, oh, wait, hang on. And I would go look at what was the energies at the time. And I was like, yes, exactly. That's what's happening. So, for example, 2023 was a deficient fire year, the period Qi. And my garden was just, it was just so fun. Like May into June, flourishing. All my greens were coming. I had basil. Everything was just growing. And then we got to the middle of July, I think it was, not even the middle of July. And one morning I went out and I was like, what just happened? What's happened? And it literally ran out of juice in the sense of that it was a deficient fire year. So we were in the height of fire season. The Xiaoyang kicks in June into July, May into June and July, and it ran out of fuel. And so my garden didn't last as long as it could have or has done before. For example, 2024, it went into the fall just like crazy. I mean, I even went away for 2 weeks and came back, and I had so much chard and kale that I was like, I have to freeze this. And it was, once again, I checked with the seasonal Qi, and I was like, here we are. And so throughout the process of me percolating with this and going back and putting it down, going back, I also was observing what was happening around me. And my garden was very tangible. And then in my clinic. And it's very, very clear now when we go into an imbalanced season, because I start seeing it in my clients. And that started showing up during COVID, as we all know, in 21, when we came out of COVID. And we sort of were staggering from that excess metal year of 2020, and then we went into a deficient water year. And so, 2021, it was like, whew, wow, where did everything go? Like, and everybody was angry, right? And that was the imbalance between water and fire because water was weak. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but it's a ripple effect. It just goes throughout the whole 5 element cycle.
Okay. I love this because I listen to you speak and I get it. I can follow you. And it makes sense with the seasons too. I remember a moment, this was in early May, a couple years back, and the lawn had just been cut like 2 days earlier. 2 days. Only 2 days earlier it had been cut. And I remember looking out at the back lawn and going, why is it so raggedy and long? It's like, no. Like, how's that? That can't be possible. I must be making things up. But no, it was. And it was 2 days earlier, the lawn had been cut. And I went and looked at, I've got this great calendar that tells you about the seasons. And it was like, oh, it's the beginning of summer. Because summer on the Chinese calendar begins in early May.
It does. Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh, like you looking at your garden. Like, oh, there it is. It's summer.
Yep. It's very tangible.
It's beginning of summer, and it was so notable.
Mm-hmm.
It was ridiculous. I couldn't unsee it after seeing it.
Right.
So for folks who want to dip their toe into this, or I don't know if you can dip your toe into it. It sounds like you have to throw yourself in, and you have to throw yourself in multiple times. How do you get started with this? How do you begin to attune your senses and your thinking and your understanding of like charts and spreadsheets and pictures with the unfolding of life in gardens and clinics and relationships?
Great question. So I have a few answers. One is I have written a book for 2025. It's actually, I packaged it in as a calendar date book. And the beginning is that's just a little bit of theory, like just for the layperson, like yin, yang, and qi. For a practitioner, you would jump into the 10 stems and the 12 branches. And then I talk about the 5 periods and how they manifest on Earth and how they, create our seasons. And I've systematically laid out the steps that it took me to get there in terms of the 5 periods, the 6 qi, the 10 stems and the 12 branches, because they're all connected. It's all one unit, really. And then I talk about 2025 specifically. And so we're under the influence of the 2nd stem, which is, yin wood, and the 6th earthly branch being the snake, which is the yin fire, right? So it's the beginning of the fire season in the 12 branches. So next year is the fire horse, and that's the yang expression of fire. So that's 2026 is going to be a handful in that respect. And so the date book sort of leads you through the foundational theory and the elements that come together to create the energies of the year. And then I go into the 6 qi periods. And we have our regular cycle, which is essentially spring, early summer, late summer, fall, and winter. And that happens every year. But as we know, every year the seasons are a little bit different. It's like, well, why is last year's spring was whatever? We have these memories. And like this year's...
Oh, yeah. And people talk about it all the time.
We do. Yeah. Yeah. And so what happens is there's what's called a guest or visitor qi that comes in and influences the expression of the regular seasons. And the order of how the guest or visitor qi shows up each year is determined by the branch. So, for example, going into 2025, our qi period actually starts yesterday into today, the first qi period. The natural energy, the host energy for the period is Dui Yin. And the visiting qi is Yang Ming. So they're first, right off the bat, we're like, hold on a minute. Spring, wood, growth, new beginnings. And it's being visited by the Yang Ming qi, which is, oh, wait, really? Harvest? Oh, we're contracting, we're pulling back. So there, right away, our spring, the expression of spring will be dysregulated. Now, what that means, it can change by location. Like wherever you are, it can look, it's going to take on characteristics that are in congruence with where you physically live, for example, right? So this last winter, we're still coming out of it, but the Tai Yang was visited by Tai Yin. And so you naturally think, oh, okay, well, it's going to be a damp, maybe slightly warmer, but damp winter. And I know here in Colorado, Western Colorado, we live in a very dry climate. And going into November, December, I would go out for my morning walk and I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's cold. Like, what's going on? And I'd have my normal jackets on. Why is the cold penetrating? Sure enough, I looked at the humidity and it was like at 60%, which for Colorado, where I am, very damp. So that's another example.
And that will penetrate into your bones. There's nothing like damp cold to go into your bones.
Yeah. So what I've come up with is a way to lead people through a year with my thoughts and that's the other thing. It's like, and I think this is where we all need to be gentle with each other, and that there are some known factors with theories that we work with. We know that. But how each of us interprets it and brings it into context for us and then out into our practices or with our relationships or into our communities, that's our process. And there's no one way to do that. That's why we're all here to learn and share from each other, is knowing that there's no perfect way to do any of this or to even understand any of this. We have to allow ourselves to make it our own.
We have to allow ourselves to make it our own. I want to put an underscore on that. One of the things I deeply love about Chinese medicine is that it is such an individualized look at a human being, their environment, their relationships. One size does not fit all. And it's so interesting to me that from a culture like Chinese culture, which is very social, like individuality much smaller than the collective how you're connected, and yet they've come up with this medicine, wildly individualistic. You would think that came from the West, but no. We're the medicine that tries to do one size fits all. It's a really odd yin-yang kind of polarity flip that I see it. But it's one of the things that I appreciate about the medicine and makes it so enlivening. Like, how is it for this person at this moment in this way?
Right.
And I think you're also right. It makes it troublesome for us to agree with each other because we're, and I know it's cliche, but we're like the blind people feeling an elephant. And one's got their hands on the trunk and one's got their hands on the ears, and they're right.
Exactly.
So there's that. Yeah, so we could all be a little more gentle with each other. I'm 100% with you on that. And wow, what a challenge. What I'd like to know a little more about is the host and the guest qi. This is, I've heard these terms, and again, I kind of have a, how would you say it, a cursory, This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary: raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code QIOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. The intellectual understanding of it. But my sense is, and I love the terms host and guest. It's like, oh, things could be harmonious, things could be troublesome. It's like someone has a stake, I'm the host, this is my place, and someone's coming from outside. So
pretty much.
That could be something where like two people create something really beautiful together as a partnership, or it could be war. So tell us a little more about host and guest.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, in the Neijing translation, they actually they use the term visitor mostly, pretty much consistently. And then I use I don't know if you know Peter Van Kervel's work, his 10 celestial stems, 12 terrestrial branches. And it's an amazing text, and a lifetime's work, I think, has gone into it. And he uses the term guest, and I sat with that a little bit. Like, do I want to use the visitor or do I want to use guest? And I find guest to be a little bit slightly more warm and fuzzy than visitor. So I don't know, I'm not really sure why that is. But essentially, our host is the qi influence that's natural to a time, being, spring, Xiaoyan, early summer, Xiaoyang, full expression of summer, and then Taiyan, late summer, Yangming, fall, and Taiyang, winter. And that's a universal law. That's how it works, and that's what they figured out by observing the world around them when they were recording all this information. The guest qi, like you said, I mean, it can be very harmonious, and then it can be very incongruent. And then it's like, well, what do we do? When things are easy, when it's like, okay, ho-hum, like, this is fun. Let's just have a really fun summer. It's all working together. But when it's incongruent, it's like, how do we harmonize or create harmony within an incongruency? And that is something that I've worked with in terms of being a clinician, and that a lot of my work is spent creating harmony or a harmonious state within a physical and all aspects of a being's manifestation. That's not, and it's not, and it never will be. Maybe they have rheumatoid arthritis or ankylosing spondylitis or lupus, like any number of conditions that we encounter clinically, that as much as we can apply everything to the best of our knowledge and show up with our best self every time we work with them, in a lot of cases, the reality is you're not going to change the fact that this person has a disorder that they're more than likely going to live with for the rest of their life. And so it's like, okay, how do I make them comfortable within that paradigm? And that's what I set out to achieve. And so I think with the guest and host energies, for example, this spring, the guest chi is Yang Ming. It's like, oh gosh, talk about opposites. It's like, wait, we're meant to be going into a whole new cycle and new growth, new beginnings, and we have this element, which, I don't like to really call elements good or bad or harsh or soft, but metal's a little, it's a little edgy. It's just by its very nature.
Hey friends, we'll get back to our conversation in a moment, but I first want to share with you part of the secret sauce that allows my clinic to run smoothly without a receptionist. It's Jane, a complete clinic management software and EMR. As a practitioner, your main priority should be caring for your patients, not worrying about raising EMR costs. That's why Jane has come up with the new Balance Plan, which includes the essential features that you need to run your clinic without any of the extra stuff that you don't. With the Balance Plan, you'll get really helpful features like one-to-one telehealth, email appointment reminders, and unlimited customer support. It's a great fit for new or growing practitioners who are booking up to 20 appointments a month. And the best part is that Jane pays for itself with the cost of just one appointment. So head over to jane.app/pricing to check out their plans starting at $39 a month in the US. And if you're ready to get started, don't forget to use the code CHIOLOGICAL at sign up for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. Oh, metal is edgy. It's its job. It's the job of metal to be edgy. It's the job of dryness to contract, right? So these are things that are in their nature. They're not good or bad in them of themselves. They just are the way they are. It's just that when you get some dryness and some contraction in the spring, when you're supposed to be like limber, juicy, and expansive, you're going to probably feel a little constricted and restricted and put upon.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So expression, new creative expression will be, it'll just be a little harder. You won't naturally tap into that energy because it's being impacted by the metal energy. And so when I put together my date book, I talk about things like that. Like, it's not just a physical experience. It's how we are in the world and our emotions and how we feel like we're showing up on a day-to-day basis for every aspect of our lives. And during a time of new growth, we've got this contraction. It's just like, whoa, what? Okay. So we might have to dig a little deeper to cultivate anything sort of new or easy. It could be just a little bit constricted.
Okay. So by the same token, I just want to riff here. Let me run this idea by you. If you happen to be in a place where you've built something, it's done well, you're actually in a phase where you're about to harvest the effort of maybe decades. Maybe this spring might not be a bad time for that because there is that energy that is ascendant. Well, maybe not ascendant, but it's present, and it's dancing with this other springtime energy of expansion. But maybe you're in a place in your life where you're selling a business, or you're in the process of retiring, or something of that nature. Maybe that would actually be helpful. Do I have that right, or am I missing something?
It really would. Yeah. No, you're not. You're spot on when you actually spot on with the retirement aspect, for example. Like something's naturally coming to an end and it needs to fall away. But at the same time, you're entering into a whole new way of being in the world as a retiree or whatever it is you choose to do, whether it's a hobby or traveling or what have you. But that's a perfect example of these two energies working in a harmonious way, actually. And so it could very well be a time for a business to be sold or someone to be like, you know what, I didn't know this, but I think I might be ready to let this go and tap into the natural energy of the year being that flowing, supple, new growth, tender time, right? To then be manifested during the fire season.
I think there's, again, I'm not an expert in this, but isn't there something with the middle of the year and there's a shift from one energy to another that goes with this as well?
Oh, yes. So we have the great cold, and this is all Northern Hemisphere, and my next project that's turned me on my tail is how does this manifest in the Southern Hemisphere? And having grown up in the Southern Hemisphere I'm kind of like, I'm going to work this out. So anyway, the great cold happened yesterday, January 20th, and we now head towards the great heat, which this year is on July 22nd. And so another thing to just keep in mind, and for the metal in us all that wants it to be exact and the same, we're talking between a day or two. Sometimes the great heat is listed as July 20th. This year, every source I looked at, it's the 22nd. I counted out the days myself. I was like, yeah, it's around about the 21st or 22nd. So, but anyway, we're headed towards the great heat on the 22nd of July. And that is when the Xiaoyang period comes to an end and gives way to Taiyin. And it's a pivot. Like basically, we're pivoting over into the yin time of the year. So to this last day or so, we have pivoted into or gone into the terminal yin, basically, Jue yin, and then we're coming up and out of it into the yang and the fire phase. So, and just like this year, just to keep us flowing with what's happening this year, the next Qi period is ruled by the Xiaoyin coming up on March 21st. And the guest Qi is Taiyang, so that gives you a little hint as to how the early summer is going to go. And then we go into Xiaoyang at the height of summer, and our guest is Jue Yin, which is problematic just because of the wind and fire elements together can be they can be hard. We've seen an example of what they can do with fires. It's awful.
Yes, we just saw what happened in as we record this here at the end of January. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah, and that is actually the Qi for the year. Michael is wood and fire, wind and fire, and the planets associated with wood and fire are Jupiter for wood and Mars for fire, and so. When I started working on this several months ago for this 2025, I was like, oh, really? Oh, my gosh. Jupiter and Mars? Like, we're, but, there's the yin and yang to everything. And so there's the opportunity for abundant growth and a higher order, if you will, like Jupiter's like big thinking, philosophy, religion, it's, we're up there. And yes, Mars is the god of war and is the best representation of fire. And that can be a good thing in terms of being a warrior, call to action, time to stand up, So there's some really good sides to these energies. Unfortunately, what we just saw in California is the natural environmental impact that these energies can have, and it can be really quite devastating. So it's just, I always try more and more as I've gotten older to maintain perspective and know that it's not all doom and gloom, and there's so much good that can come out of some of these things. And yeah, anyway, that's kind of the wood and fire energy is big this year.
This is interesting. Are you familiar with, do you know who Dan Carlin is?
No, I'm not sure.
No. Okay. Dan Carlin he's got a thing he does a history podcast, hardcore history. And he often talks about, he's a really interesting podcaster. super interesting storyteller. And he always picks these really like wacko times in human history. I mean, crazy wacko times, right? Like the invasion of Mongol hordes and like moments in medieval Germany where like towns just go crazy and weird things, right? Like humans doing the worst of what humans do. And he always talks about it in terms of, look, it's not something you'd want to live through.
Right.
Right. He always says it's not something you want to live through. He's got a great voice. It's very funny. But these events often will like clear the ground in some way. Like a forest fire clears the ground. They will clear the ground. They will take out the deadwood. They will transform societies in profound and horribly difficult ways. And what can come out of that might actually be wonderful. I'm not playing Pollyanna here. I'm not saying, oh, we should be happy about that. No, we shouldn't. And I've seen this in my own life at times where something has fallen apart. It's like broken.
Right.
Life is awful. And I look back in 10 years and go, oh, what a lucky break that was.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So, and this is not to diminish at all the suffering.
No, it's basically the cycle of life, right? Like, it's just we don't have, as much as we would like to many times believe, whether it's conscious or not, yeah, it happens. It's things fall apart, and as a result, new things come about, and it's not pretty, and it can be awfully uncomfortable,
devastating, even.
But that's life. It's really the natural order of life. That's what happens. Yeah, yeah. So we're, and the other thing about this too, to help maintain perspective, is these qi energies cycle through every 60 years. So the 2020s have the same qi setup as the 1960s. And so we are smack bang in the middle coming into 2025. And if you go back and look at the 60s as a decade, it's like, oh my gosh, hang on to your hats. Like, can you remember?
No kidding.
Yeah. So we're just, it's 60 years later. Elements look different in terms of what's going on culturally and globally, and gosh, it's like a different world. However, we are now in that same qi cycle, and there's some really cool things happened in the 60s. Like actually 65, the Medicare and Medicaid Act was put in place, equal voting rights was put in place. We did have all the riots. Malcolm X was assassinated. But we had the Bloody Sunday riots, the Watts riots in LA. And so, which makes me think call to action. Like they stood up. They're like, no more. We're warriors. We're going to stand up for ourselves. And we're going, that's how it's all unfolding now. The elements are just a little different.
It really puts it in perspective to pause, look back 60 years. Oh, yeah, that was a revolutionary time.
It was. Yeah. I mean, imagine, my parents were English, and so I grew up outside of the U.S., but we all were under the same influence of the post-war era. So the 50s was all about, new ovens and cars and the 4 kids and all that good, nice, tidy approach to the world, right? And naturally, after the decade of the 40s with World War II, naturally, the 50s was maintained or developed some sense of order and culture. And then the 60s came along and just said, no, sorry, we're just going to flip that one on its head. And
yes, we need to shake that up.
Yeah.
You've been complacent. It's been quiet. That's been nice. Yeah, here, let's do this instead.
Pretty much.
And so it goes, right?
Yeah.
Now, 60 years ago, it would have been, the yang version of what we're facing right now? Is this the yin version we have right now? Because it's like every 120 years, it comes around to the same, yin or yang polarity. Do I have that right?
Right. But I think, are you talking about the period tree, Michael?
Yeah, okay. So this is a good point. I'm not sure what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that you were saying 60 years ago, we had basically the same influences.
We did. So 1960 was an excess metal year.
Excess metal. And was it yin or yang?
And so was 2020. Oh, sorry. It's yang. Yeah.
It's yang. So this one's yin.
It is.
Okay.
Oh, this year, 25 is deficient. Yes. Yin.
is yin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then another 60 years in the future, it will be yang again.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I suspect that plays something as well.
It does. And I think that's something that I'm glad you brought up, because last year was a yang year, and yes, it was wood, and we're still in wood. We have the yi, the second stem, but it's yin. So it's naturally, I feel it's softer. It's like it's going to flow a little easier. We've got some harsh elements happening, but the overall energy for the year is just softer, because the period chi for the year is deficient metal. So that edginess is kind of toned down quite a bit. And we have the yin wood energies rather than the yang wood energies. And so I think we can take a moment and exhale and just relax a little bit. And it's been, we're going through a huge time of change, and having a little grace added in, sprinkled in, helps. It really does help for us to just be like, okay, there we go. Let's just take a moment.
Okay. Could it be like the 50s, a little pause after
momentary,
a big fiery problem?
Yeah.
Well, everything's momentary. Right. I mean, what's not momentary?
Yeah, it's I'm generally, that's the Jupiter energy, right? I'm optimistic. I think that I hold out quite a bit of hope and faith, and just trust that things are going to sort themselves out, and maybe not right away, but it's been an interesting 5 years. If I don't know that we all always need to go back to COVID, but at the same time, it's a huge bookend in my life anyway. It's like, wow, what did we go through, and what are we dealing with now, and how is that showing up, and all in the world around me. And it's just, we can't ignore, well, not ignore that it happened. It's just, it's still very present. The effects of it, we're still working with it.
The effects are wildly present.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I notice, and this could be controversial, but so what? Like during COVID, everybody was like super freaked out about COVID for good reasons. We had no idea what it was.
Right.
In the beginning, right? Not unlike the AIDS epidemic, right? Some years earlier. It's like, what is this? We don't know. And it's deadly and it's scary and it's unknown. Anytime that kind of thing rolls into town, it'll get your attention. The thing with COVID that I find really interesting is that COVID-25 is not at all the same as COVID-19.
No.
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner. Because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital chi. And that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of chi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
Oh gosh, no. Mm-mm.
They're very, very different critters, and yet I notice in many camps there's this continual hearkening back to, well, it's COVID-19, that it's stuck in our consciousness in a way that you hear COVID and it's like COVID-19.
Right.
But it's COVID-25.
Exactly.
Because everything changes and it shifts. And wind pathogens in particular, highly, highly mutable. We know this from Chinese medicine.
Right.
Right. Blood pathogens don't mutate much.
Right.
They're much more fixed.
Right.
It's amazing how Chinese medicine can enter into microbiology and help you make sense of it. But yeah, there is something that happened with that COVID shift, a real split, a real rendering.
Mm-hmm.
or not rendering, but like a renting of the time-space continuum in a way.
Right.
It's impinged itself on our consciousness in a way that those of us that have lived through it, I'm not sure we ever quite get over it.
I don't think so. I would agree. I don't know that it's something that it's like loss. You learn to live with it. You can't change it. Like it happened. Like that, if it's a person, that person's no longer physically with us, and you can't undo that. That's part of it. So you learn how to live. You incorporate that into the fabric of who you are, and you move forward with that within you. And I think that's COVID has done that to us, or for us, if you could, rather than to us, done that for us.
Ooh, that's an interesting thing you just said. For us.
Well, I don't like feeling victimized by anything, Michael. So when I say something's happened...
No, but this is, again, this is I heard you pause for a second, and I caught it too. For us. That's a totally different stance than to us. So when you're in that, it happened for us. Tell me some about the energies of the Wu Yun Liu Qi that put you in that perspective of, I've got some agency here, and I'm taking this as something that's for me, troublesome as it is. What are the energies that you're pulling on that help you to adopt that perspective? Because you need to let it into your perception before it can get into your consciousness.
Right. It's about flow and the nature of qi. It's easy for me to move forward and experience any given situation if there's a sense of flow. And for me to feel that sense of flow, it needs to be an unfolding of experience. And so as we see a season unfold, how is it unfolding? Like, how do we work with this? Like, we can't fight it. Like, it's going to happen. And so how do we work with the energies that are presenting themselves? And it's really clinically, I think, as acupuncturists and Chinese herbal medicine practitioners, it's all about flow. We want things to move. We don't want them to move too fast, which we, ideally hope we have some control over.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. We want it to move, not too much. We want it to be firm, not too firm.
Exactly. So that's where when you have a perspective where something's happening for you as opposed to you, it's a completely different relationship with whatever it is you're interacting with.
Yeah. I'm kind of hearing your words echo and thinking for myself how often I will take that stance of, why did this have to happen to me? Why me? Right? And constantly pushing against what I don't like, considering for me. That's a whole, I just have to stand in a different place.
Right. Yeah. I think we're all part of developing and unfolding as a human being is under recognizing where we can be, we can really get in our own way. And I've had my fair share of it. And I've lived my 60-year cycle, and I get to observe, like, wow, okay, what? And, it's like, you can't change time. Here we go. And there's a grace that comes with having that understanding that things are happening for us. And I know my relationships, my personal relationship with my husband and also my family, birth family and not birth family, flow is crucial to harmonious relationships.
Have you ever had that moment when you look at something so familiar and think, why has no one done this before? Well, that was me. I'm John Stan, doctor of TCM and creator of innovative clinical tools like the AccuFast Earth-Friendly Needle and accessories. Throughout my 35 years of practice, I've always sought ways to improve techniques, and I am excited to share with you our new cupping innovation. Traditional round cups leave gaps when placed together, which limits myofascial release. But what if cups weren't round? Enter square cupping. Fascia Buddy Square Cups offer 5 sizes of square cups, so practitioners can now create a precise myofascial decompression zone. thereby maximizing qi and blood flow to the area and increasing the speed of healing. Plus, when used for moving cupping, the straight edges act like a gua sha tool, engaging tissues in ways round cups simply can't. Think of it as gua sha supercharged. Combined with Fascia Buddy silicone cups, Fascia Buddy square cups unlock an entirely new yin-yang cupping system. The future of cupping is square. Visit fasciabuddy.com to learn more and transform your cupping practice today.
You know, I know we talk about this in the Chinese medicine world, that flow is the important thing, and the idea is to make sure things flow. And one level I think about that, I go, well, that's nice, it's poetic, it's beautiful, you know, it's kind of groovy, I can get on board with that. And then there's this other part of me that goes, what the hell are you talking about? What are you even looking at? Like flow. Flow by itself really doesn't make much sense to me. Like flow. Okay, I'm imagining a river, I can imagine air currents. There's all that. What I really appreciate in talking with you here today is considering flow in terms of you've got the branch element, you got the stem element, you've got the host, you've got the guest. Okay, now we have a context to consider flow within, because flow by itself is meaningless.
Right.
But flow within the context of influences, or flow within the context of looking at a body, and you can see where there's stagnation, you can even feel it, and where there might be deficiency, right?
Right.
Again, you've got a context to work within. And I think that's what gives Chinese medicine East Asian medicine, whatever we're calling it this week, gives it so much power, because we can look at context.
All the time, yes.
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the context is always changing, so.
Yeah. And that's looking at a year.
Good luck.
I mean, I can get real detailed if I feel like I want to, but I actually gain the most insight by looking at the framework within the playing field. So for 2025, what are we dealing with? Okay, well, we've got the period qi is deficient metal. We have the yin wood stem, and then we've got the yin fire snake. Okay, what else do we have? You know, and as a result of that, we've got climactic influences. For the first half of the year is the Dui Yin, and the second half of the year is the Xiao Yang. And it's like, okay, wind and fire. All right, okay, these are all the elements that we're working with this year. And how are we going to flow with them? Like, how does this unfold for us? And it's not really predictive in the sense that we can say, well, if there's a time that's ripe for war, it's this year because we've got the wood and fire. We've got Jupiter and Mars, and it's like, well, yeah, maybe, but does that mean it's going to happen? Is it maybe likely? Possibly. But we really don't know until it happens, right? We don't really know until we get there.
Right. Well, here's the other thing. Again, I'm not trying to be Pollyanny, but if you got this Jupiter effect, you got this Mars effect, there could be great expansion with a lot of juice behind it.
Exactly.
There could be some tremendous breakthroughs that have energy behind them. So they're sustainable. That's also a possibility.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Transformation could mean destruction. Transformation can mean creation of something amazing.
Absolutely. I think in 1965, we did our first spacewalk. It's an example of, right? I mean, and then there's fun things like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones toured. It's like, oh, wow. Okay, cool. And that's what you're talking about. It's new. It's expansion. And it's got a lot of passion and energy behind it. So we're kind of ripe here in 2025.
Yeah. I'm feeling a little optimistic at the moment.
That's nice. That's a good thing to feel this week.
I'm feeling a little optimistic. Transformation is never comfortable. I know in our trade we often talk about, you know, the transformative power of what we do. Or, you know, I help people with transformation. And I don't know about you. I don't know about the listeners out there, but when I hear the word transformation these days, I'm like, buckle the hell up.
Exactly.
Like, really? Can I possibly avoid that? I mean, even a great one.
Right.
Right? Transformation is never comfortable.
It is not. And it's not, it's the process of the very nature of transformation is you transform or something transforms. And the only way for that to happen is to go through some kind of metamorphosis, and that's not easy. I mean, take birth, for example. It's the transformation of being incubated, basically, regardless of what species, and brought out into the world. And it's like, oh, wait, what? Wait, I was like a nice warm fluid a second ago, and now you want me to stand up on my legs? Like, I'm thinking of an animal, for example, but, yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah.
It's quite dramatic, and that's transformation. It's dramatic.
So back to our friends, the stems and branches.
Yes.
And the different movements and the different chi. We have a roadmap here. We have a kind of a map. And with influences, and this is what I love about it, you got 12 in one place and 10 in another, and these cycles interpenetrate each other. And so it's this constant, it's almost like looking at a kaleidoscope. You got the same stuff in the kaleidoscope. You give it a turn, the material inside falls a different way, but through the prisms, you'll see a different pattern. And then you give it a turn again, same prisms, same stuff in the kaleidoscope, new pattern. And it seems to me like the stems and the branches, because they're turning like this, it's constantly a new pattern made out of the same stuff.
Exactly. I mean, that you said it in a nutshell. And basically, the 5 become 10 and the 6 chi become 12. And then they dance with each other. That's how I view it, is that they rotate through their own cycles and join with each other during that time to create the energy for any given time. Yeah.
Never a dull moment.
No, there's not. And what's fascinating to me, and this has always been the case, well, as long as I've been in my career, which has been a very long time now, is that it never stays the same. There's a continual unfolding of energy that we get to interact with on every level and every day, and it's theories that were developed and nurtured thousands of years ago, and they're so still applicable. Like it's just this overlay of chi that just shows up over and over and over again, and it has done and it will do, and we get to interact with it and use it as a tool or information. We can resist it. Absolutely, we can. Or we can, resist for a while and be like, oh, okay, well, that's not working. Let's just go, move forward instead of sort of stuck.
Yeah, well, or like you with your spreadsheets and your diagrams and your charts. Let me see if I can understand what these things are, these different patterns that show up. I've got a question, and I wish it's not going to be super precise because I don't understand it really well, but I want to ask you something about heavenly movements. And I don't know if this is helpful in clinic at all, but I've done just a little tiny bit of study. I've had some conversations with Deborah Wolf, for example, who every time I talk to her, my mind gets blown, and then I try to understand, how can I use this?
Right.
Right. It's good. Ooh, I got a glimpse of the universe, but what do I do with it in clinic? So there's that piece, and we could probably talk for hours about that. But I want to ask you about some movements in the heavens, because it seems like that movement in the heavens is different than the 5 phases of the earth.
But to a degree, so the movements in the heavens are basically the Dui-yin. That's the wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Earth being the pole star, right? So it's everything's around the earth, and then in the heaven, or around the pole star. And then on earth, they create the 6 by the division of fire. So the 5 of heaven become the 6 chi on earth, and manifestation of the seasons on earth. And this is a great question, because it's really one of the hardest things I had to work with was the Neijing. And I got to a point where I had to take it at face value so I could move on. Otherwise, I was going to drive myself stark raving mad. So the 5 periods move clockwise, and the 6 chi move counterclockwise. And that's part of this kaleidoscope that you're talking about. And in the Neijing, it talks moving to the left and to the right. And that also drove me crazy. And there's a fundamental thing that we need to remember when they talk about left and right is that you need to face south. And so when you face south and you read a passage from the Neijing talking about left and right, then you're going to be in sync with what they're talking about. And so it can be really challenging. And I have my own degree of dyslexia in terms of left and right. I think having grown up driving on one side of the road and moving to a country as an adult and having to drive on the other side of the road. And so now when I say turn left, I'm like 9 times out of 10, I'm wanting you to turn right. So for me, that was a stumbling block. And like I said, it was one of the times where I had to take it at face value from what I was reading and move on so that I could make more sense of what was going on. And then I can go back. And to this day, I still can get that mixed up. Pardon?
So you really have to orient yourself. You have to really orient yourself. You have to know how to orient yourself.
Once again, it's contextual. Yeah.
Imagine that. Chinese medicine contextual.
Right. I think for me, Michael, with clinic, the 5 movement for each year, Qi, and I use the term period for those who are listening, and we're using these terms interchangeably, but the 5 movements is probably more accurate. But how I look at that is that, for example, the movement Qi for this year is deficient metal. So those of us, those that were born in 1965, they were born during the same energies that are happening for us right now. But the 5 movements, they go through their cycle from excess to deficient for a total of 10, and then they start back up, right? So it's just kind of rotating all the time. So I like to know the year, not on every case I work on, but some cases that have me a little bit sort of perplexed, and I'm feeling their pulse, and I've sat with them and chatted, and I'm like looked at their tongue, and I'm like, okay, I know what formula I want to start with, and I certainly can get started with acupuncture, but I feel like I'm missing something. And so I will often look at the year that they were born, and I will look at the Qi, the movement period Qi for that year. I go look at, and this is big macro. Once again, I'm like, okay, right. Okay, so they were born, let's say, during a deficient metal year. And is that playing a role here? And I might go back and with that information, we'll see them the next time, and I'll pay a little bit more attention to the pulse, the lung, right? Like I'll just start observing. And I have had times where and a good example, I was working with someone, postmenopausal woman, who wanted to get their cholesterol down because their doctor wanted them to go on meds. And so they wanted to take herbs and do some diet and lifestyle work with me. And we got started. And they also had this dry patch of skin on their face. And it kind of comes and goes and flares up. And long story short, I thought, you know what? I looked at the year. I was like, yep, that's metal in there. I'm going to add in a little Maimendong. And I was treating the liver and gallbladder and the spleen and stomach, right? But I thought, I'm just going to add in a little Maimendong, 6 grams. Let's see. It was amazing. It was like, oh, okay. The dryness went away. And the bowel movements became a little bit more regular. And just that little nudge or support for the metal element made all the difference. And so that's where, for me, being such a TCM, and it's lovely. It's really like, oh, this is good. I like this. And so that's where I use, in terms of, that's where I've used it the most clinically, is understanding the element at play when the year that they were born. And I know you can get down into the month, and that's, I'm not talking about that. I'm just thinking macro in terms of big picture stuff. And it becomes very tangible to me. Yeah. Actually, a couple of years ago, it was incredibly windy here. It went on for weeks. And my husband was doing some part-time work. He's semi-retired, so he was doing some work over at the rec center. And the wind kept on. And I was like, man, this is like apocalyptic wind. It like just won't stop. And I started seeing it in my patients, the frazzled, frayed nerves and everything. And one day my husband came back from his session at the rec center, and he goes, everybody's about to lose their you-know-what. And he said they're starting to realize it's the wind. And I was like, they are correct. It is the wind. It's driving us all crazy. And so it can be at times very, very tangible what some of these more, what we would consider macro influences can have on us.
Yeah. It's always interesting to me when I have people come in and say things like, well, I was out riding my bicycle and it was really windy and I was just so angry.
Right.
Okay. It is.
Yeah.
It's wonderful seeing these expressions. And you can go really macro. You can go more micro. If you really want to get into, the batsi and things like that.
Right.
I really appreciate what you had to say here, Christine, about you've got a way of working and it's foundational. You're not changing your foundation. That foundation is a firm basis for adding other things in that give you more clarity, give you more nuance, give you more perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think maybe to some degree I've always been that way. A few years after I graduated from school, I studied Toyohari, the Japanese style, and I loved it. And I tried to gradually incorporate the techniques into my practice. And it was interesting. This is where our patients can be our teachers. They wouldn't have it. They weren't having it. They wanted me. They're like, what do you mean you're going to hold that silver thing on my point and not put a needle in, And they did not respond. And so I stuck with I stuck with the pulse reading and some of the moxa techniques, but no, the non-insertion was not going to fly. It was kind of interesting.
Not with your patients.
No.
Not with them.
No. So it's really, our patients really do, our patient bases really do shape us as practitioners. I mean, there's no way around it because everything has to jive. And if they're not into what you're doing, well, then it's not going to work.
Yeah, I've had some patients. I'm really curious about that super subtle stuff. And so I've worked some with the touch needling and teishings I think are fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And for some patients, they're great.
Right.
And powerful. And for some patients, they're like, I came here for acupuncture, damn it. Like, give me some acupuncture. Give me some acupuncture. Like, okay. All right, Farmer Joe.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I had one patient really had a bit of a moment after one of my treatments emotionally. And he came back the following week and he said, don't you ever do that to me again. And I was like, okay. And I was in a multi-practitioner environment and his MD pretty much shared with me that he had quite an emotional response. And so I was like, oh, no wonder he said that. He's not going to want that. So, you kind of have to allow yourself to be guided by your patients.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had a few patients say that to me too. I had a great idea what I think would be right for them. That was my idea.
Exactly.
They did not think it was right for them. And they were generous enough with me to come back and say those exact words. Don't you ever do that to me again.
Yeah. It gets your attention. And I think, Michael, you just said something really important is we need to be mindful of our agendas for our patients and be really with them in that moment and based on our perception of being with them and feeling their pulse, using all our tools, be with them and treat them accordingly. And maybe when they filled out their paperwork or, you had the first session with them, you're like, right, I'm going to do this. Right. And you lose sight because you've made up your mind that you've already treated them. And it's like, wait a minute, you're not with them. You're ahead of them and you need to stay with them and adjust at any given time in terms of what you may do with your treatment.
That's right. Because you know what? We are the guest chi in our patient's life.
Exactly. Well said. Yes. And that is where I like the term guest rather than visitor. Visitor feels a little, not sure, invasive almost, whereas guest is more invitational.
It's more invitational. Well, we could say migrant. How about the migrant chi?
Oh my gosh.
But, I'm being a little funny here.
Yeah.
Provocatively so.
Right.
Because there can be that sense of, oh, this feels like an invasion.
Right.
Right? So guest, visitor, migrant. Ooh. What about playing with all those words? They all have a meaning within a context.
Absolutely.
And to some degree, it will depend on the host. If it feels like an invasion, the host isn't going to like it.
Exactly.
If it feels like a visitor, well, maybe. I got my eye on you. If it's a guest, that could be more welcoming. But I think they all have a place, again, depending on the context.
Right. And then that in the patient practitioner relationship, people coming to us for help, of course. They're coming, that the energy is they're seeking you out to help them or guide them to get them through whatever it is they're working with. And if we feel honored and have some grace about being asked to work with them and be on their journey with them, then we are truly showing up as a guest, as opposed to more of a prescriptive model of, hi, I'm here. Can you take my blood pressure and then give me a prescription? That interaction is guest? Not sure. It's transactional almost.
Transactional. Yes. These are wonderful nuances just to take into clinic and see how do they play.
Yeah.
This is really helpful.
And how does the season of a year with its guest chi, how is that interacting with our patient and what their foundational core chi is, like their constitutional chi, if you will, of the year, typically goes back to the year that they're born. How is that lining up with these layers of energy that we have at play in 2025? We've got a lot of wood and fire at play. And so understandably, it's easy, and we should go, okay, well, wood and fire type constitutions are going to need some tempering. They're going to need some, just smoothing out the edges, whereas our metal patients might need a little bit more support, right, to show up and balance those other systems. And what I like about this whole system or theory, Michael, is that there's a lot of room for manifestation, really. Manifestation may not be the right term, but there's a lot of room for us to work with people and energy and keep things harmonious and balanced. And we may find ourselves tonifying water to manage the fire rather than going after the fire and sedating it. We might be like, wait, what if I do something with water? And will that help add some balance to the equation?
It's never dull, is it?
No.
It's fascinating. Wonderful.
It is. And I think, it just needs to be how we bring it out into our world. Yeah.
And it's endlessly fascinating.
Always.
Turn that kaleidoscope.
It is a kaleidoscope.
Well, I've got some other questions.
Okay, great.
In particular about this double fire thing that happens down on the earth plane. As you go from heaven with one fire down into the earth with two fires. But we're kind of out of time today. So maybe come back and we'll sit down and talk about the double fire of earth and what that is about, because that is a real curiosity that I've had for a long time.
And I'm working with it too. Yeah, it's really quite fascinating. Mm-hmm.
And you're working with it too. All right. Well, will you come back and we can have another conversation about that?
That would be great. I'd like that.
Maybe in the summer or something like that when it's...
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing.
Absolutely. During the Xiaoyang. That would be perfect.
All right, Christine. Thanks so much for your time today. This has been a delight.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful, Michael. Thank you.
It seems to me, speaking as a practitioner, that there is something inherently stable about the number 6. You've got 6 influences that can be grouped together into 3 counterbalanced sets, but 5, that is more inherently unstable. In essence, the 5 gives us movement, and the 6 gives us quietude. And like everything here on the dirt ball, we do need a good measure of both. It makes me question the use of, air quotes here, fixed to mean repaired or corrected in our clinical work, because fixed usually means to make something immobile. People are looking for help, and I know entirely too often I'm thinking to myself, how can I fix this? But really, our work is not about fixing. It's not about nailing something down. Our work is to enliven things in just the way that the body, or spirit for that matter, needs enlivening. We need both variable movement and balanced quietude. If you enjoyed this conversation, we have some others that you might also find interesting. There's episode 109, Spiral Stems and Branches, the structure of unfoldment in time and space, with Deborah Wolf. We also have her in episode 255, Puzzling Through the Heavenly Stems, and 278, Digging the Earthly Branches. And there's Sherry Lee in episode number 271, who joins us for a conversation on cycles, nodes, and the spaces in the seasons. There's more in the back catalog too. Visit the website to browse the library. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.